The NBA's new anti-tanking rules are going to send that league into a tailspin, and it's all because of their new CBA. Now, it's no secret that the league's new 1, 2, 3 rules, which were released earlier this week and aim at prevent tanking, are an overreaction by the league to an issue that really is not that big of a deal and are perhaps just objectively a bad idea. They do things like punish the teams with the 3 worst records in the league, giving them worse odds at getting the number 1 overall pick. They flatten the odds, making them all the same, of the teams with the 4th through the 10th worst records in the league. A big overreaction to just a couple of teams trying to lose a couple of extra games throughout the year. On its own, they're bad. When you combine them with a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement that is coming up on 2 years old for the league, that was a bombshell when it came out, it's going to create all kinds of issues. That CBA already has created all kinds of issues. If you're a fan of parity and don't like super teams, it really hasn't made issues and more of just changes. When it came out in 2024, it introduced a bunch of new things, most notably an imitation hard cap. Unlike other major sporting leagues, there is no true hard salary cap, but the so-called second apron in the new CBA does a really good impression of one. This second apron is an imaginary ceiling, a line drawn in the sand by the league. This year it will be at about $208 million per team, where if a franchise spends more than that, there are huge ramifications. There's a long list of rules of things that you can and most notably cannot do when you are over that second apron of spending. And they're pretty drastic. You can't take advantage of things like the mid-level exception, buyout markets for players. You can't sign and trade players. Of course, you can't sign any new players that aren't minimum players. You even have first-round picks in future years potentially frozen and negated, taken all the way back to the end of the first round if you are a repeat offender of going over this second apron. By and large, what it does is make it really hard for teams to spend a lot of money or outspend their opponents. In layman's terms, it prevents the building of super teams. A lot of super teams in the last few decades in the league were simply built through the accretion of cash. You spend a ton of money in free agency, you go add someone in a trade, and suddenly you've got 3 of the 10 or 15 best players in the league. Think about the Nets a few years ago. They go and get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. They trade for James Harden. Suddenly you've got this huge squad of big names. That really would be all but impossible under the new CBA. It says, hey, it's going to be really, really hard to pay, and especially consistently pay these players over long periods of time. It points you towards building through the draft. It makes the league more homegrown. They want loyalty. They don't want super teams. Fine. The new CBA, it does just that. To succeed in the new CBA, you have to build through the draft and you have to win quickly. Because as you build through the draft, you will get cheaper players on rookie deals, and you will have to win largely while they are still on those rookie deals. Think about the Thunder and the Spurs, the 2 teams dominating the West. Once Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren become payable past their rookie deals, it's going to be very hard to keep both of them. More than likely, OKC will have to pick one or the other. The Spurs have a similar problem. Wembanyama, all-time star, you're going to pay him his money. The problem is paying everybody else. The Castles, the Harpers, the Vassell's won't really be able to stay on the Spurs for any real money near their actual worth. That's fine. Enter the new anti-tanking rules. It's now harder than ever to build consistently through the draft. If you have to pick in the top 5 3 years in a row, just kidding, no you can't. If you get the number 1 overall pick 2 years in a row, just kidding, no you can't. If you have one of the 3 worst records in the league, if you are one of the 3 worst basketball teams in the National Basketball Association, you are actually penalized in the draft. The idea of the draft should be to help these teams get better. Now it is making it all but impossible to use the draft as an avenue to do so. Now, I understand that it is stopping tanking teams from tanking. Think about the Jazz. They won't be able to sit healthy players like they did. Think about the Wizards. They won't be able to scratch players from playing that otherwise, under any other circumstances, probably would have. But also then think about the Sacramento Kings, who are god-awful at basketball. They got to their horrible record by being horrible. They now are punished under these new rules. Think about my team, the Detroit Pistons from a few years ago. I know that they flamed out in the playoffs this year, but they should be the perfect example of a homegrown squad. They were terrible, and I mean really terrible at basketball for a number of consecutive years. Now, they were already screwed by the draft. They had bottom odds, best odds to get the number one overall pick a number of years in a row and got consistently the fourth, the sixth, the fifth pick. That's pretty much what would happen universally to these squads under the new rules. It's going to make it very hard to have a good shot at the best player in the draft if you are really bad. That, to me, gets away from what makes basketball basketball. It's going to keep bad teams really bad, and it's going to emphasize mediocrity. If you can stay in that middling range of maybe the 10th or the 8th worst team in the league, it's fine. There's no punishment for that. You can pretend like you're pushing for a play-in spot, and you can still get the best odds at the number one overall pick. That, to me, feels like you're getting away from what you really want to build the NBA around. And it's going to make it very tough for bad teams to get any better. And in theory, should keep the good teams good for longer.